What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and the most surprising announcement at Apple's September event was the iPad mini 6. Now, sure, the iPhone 13 and the Apple Watch Series 7 are cool, but the iPad mini got the biggest upgrade over its predecessor by far. So in this video, we're going to discuss whether or not the iPad mini 6 is worth the $500 price tag, and we're going to go over some details that Apple did not mention that you need to know. All right, so first off, this new iPad mini got its first physical redesign in its history. Ever since the iPad mini was introduced to the world back in 2012, it's had the same 7.9-inch display with the big bezels around the sides and a home button. Now, of course, there were upgrades to the display over the years, like switching to the Retina display back in 2013 and adding True Tone and the P3 wide color gamut in 2019, but nothing physically different. It has always looked the same as it did back in 2012. But this year, Apple has changed just about everything with the mini. We have all new pink, purple, and starlight colors to accompany the classic space gray colorway. We have an 8.3-inch liquid retina display with far less bezel than we've ever had on the mini, and that's because Apple has finally removed the home button for the first time on the iPad mini. So now, instead of a home button with Touch ID, we have the power button on the top of the device with a Touch ID fingerprint sensor built in, just like we saw with the latest iPad Air. And you'll also notice up top that the volume buttons have been moved from the side of the iPad to the top, over there to the left of the power button. Now, I thought this was an interesting move, and my first reaction is why? I liked it better when the volume rockers and the volume buttons were on the side. But when I really thought about it, you're going to be using the iPad mini in landscape mode probably 90% of the time. So now all of a sudden, those buttons are on the side when you flip it over, and you're playing a game, you're watching a video, whatever you're doing. So now I don't see that as a big con like I did originally. We also lose the infamous headphone jack for the first time, which I don't think anybody really cares about anymore since everybody has AirPods these days. We gain support for the second generation Apple Pencil, whereas we could only use the first generation Pencil beforehand. We get stereo speakers now for the first time in an iPad mini, so audio won't just be coming out of one side of the tablet, and you won't be, covering up the speaker with your hands. You have muffled sound, which was always one of my biggest pet peeves with the iPad mini 5. We get the same resolution and the same 500 nits of peak brightness that we had on the 5th generation, along with True Tone and the P3 wide color gamut. Now, this display is also the same as the one that we see in the new iPad Air, the latest iPad Air. And to make things even better, and just to make this device just that much more compact, it's also shorter and lighter than it has been previously. It's now 7.69 inches in height compared to 8 inches, and it weighs slightly less at 293 grams versus 300 grams. It's now 7.69 inches in height compared to 8 inches, and it weighs slightly less at 293 grams versus 300 grams. It did, however, get ever so slightly thicker at 6.3 millimeters versus 6.1 millimeters, but I doubt you would ever notice that unless I pointed it out. Now, one thing that Apple just kind of glossed over and didn't really make a big deal about is that the iPad mini increased to $500 this year, which is a $100 increase over the previous generation, the starting price. But that's not the big issue, because there's a lot of things to, kind of make you say it's worth the extra $100. The big issue is that they kept the storage sizes the same. So you're paying an extra $100 for the same 64 gigabytes of starting storage. So you only have 64 and 256 to choose from. So that's kind of ridiculous to me. I think that it should have started at 128 like we saw with the iPhones. It really doesn't make any sense to increase the price by $100 and just keep the same storage options. And not to mention, if you wanted to upgrade to the 256 gigabyte model, it's usually, like $100 to go from one storage size to the next. Well, with the iPad mini, it's $150 more to go from 64 to 256, which again, I'm just not a big fan of. And honestly, at that point, $650 for an iPad mini, there's no real value anymore there. You may as well just go for an iPad Air or an iPad Pro at that point. Now, to try to justify that price hike, Apple did include an A15 Bionic chip inside, which is a massive upgrade over the previous iPad mini, which had the A12 Bionic chip. But another thing that Apple did not mention is that yes, this A15 Bionic chip is the same one that we see in the iPhone 13 series all the way up to the iPhone 13 Pro Max, but it's actually a downclocked version of the A15 Bionic. And we know this thanks to the early benchmark tests that reveal that it is downclocked to 2.9 gigahertz compared to 3.2 gigahertz in all iPhone 13 models. But even with a downclocked A15 chip, The new iPad mini scores show that it is up to 40% faster in single core and up to 70% faster in multi-core performance compared to the 5th generation. So the reason for downclocking is probably just because Apple wants to have the iPad Pro just far and ahead of everything else. Because why would they want to put out an iPad that's half the price of the iPad Pro and it competes, in terms of performance? Apple wants the iPad Pro to be the top notch and to just be far better than everything else in terms of performance. So it makes sense, but this new iPad mini is still going to be an absolute beast when it comes to the performance. In fact, Apple actually says that this new iPad mini is going to have 40% better performance and 80% better graphics performance. And that 80% increase is because we now get a 5-core GPU compared to a 4-core GPU that we had before. So gaming is going to see a nice boost here, and I will be comparing the two models here on the channel, the iPad mini 6 versus the 5 here on the channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss that. Now, battery life remains the same as the last iPad mini, and that battery life is also the same as it was on the latest M1 iPad Pro. So you will still be getting that all-day battery life that we've been used to on these tablets. And another new addition this year is 5G compatibility. So if you wanted to pay up and get the cellular model, it's no longer just LTE. You will now be getting 5G capabilities to pair with Wi-Fi 6 as well. So faster Wi-Fi and of course faster speeds via data with 5G. Now, one thing to note that Apple did not mention about this 5G connectivity is that it does not include millimeter wave. So it's just sub-6 5G along with more LTE bands, of course, for the 4G. So no millimeter wave, which to me is not a big deal at all, but I did just want to point it out because Apple didn't really specifically talk about that. We also get USB-C on the iPad mini for the first time. So, you're going to be able to charge faster, you're going to have better transfer speeds, you're going to be able to hook up other accessories and SSD drives. It's just so much better to have that USB-C compared to Lightning, especially for an iPad. And then lastly, the cameras, both the front and the rear camera, got massive upgrades this year. Now, I know you're not going to go around using your iPad to record video or take photos because you probably have an iPhone with you that has better quality anyways, but still, we have a 12 megapixel wide angle lens with Smart HDR3 and Quad LED True Tone Flash on the back now. You can also now record video in up to 4K 60 FPS, which is something you've never been able to do on an iPad mini before. So you're gonna see some nice improvements with that rear facing camera, but the real star of the show is going to be the front facing camera because we're going to be going from a 7 megapixel HD camera to a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera on the front. So thanks to that ultra wide lens in the front and also paired with the A15 Bionic chip, we now get access to the amazing center stage feature on the new iPad mini. So we saw this debut last year with the M1 iPad Pro, and basically this allows the camera to automatically follow you around as you move in a frame. Like you're in a FaceTime call, if you're on Zoom, wherever you're at, it's going to follow you around as you move and keep you centered in the frame, which is amazing. This is an amazing feature, and again, it's all thanks to that 12 megapixel ultra wide lens paired with that A15 Bionic chip. So all in all, the iPad mini 6 is a massive upgrade over any previous iPad mini. And while I'm not a fan of Apple increasing the price by $100 while keeping the storage options the same, especially at 64 gigabytes here in 2021, where storage is so cheap, there's no reason that should stay at 64 gigabytes. So I'm not a fan of that, but still, I cannot deny the fact that I think this new iPad mini is worth the $500. I mean, pretty much everything has changed on it. And because so many things have changed, I do feel like that extra $100 is justified. But again, I still wish that it started at 128 gigabytes like Apple did with the iPhone lineup this year. So needless to say, I will be upgrading from my iPad mini 5 to the new iPad mini 6. And even if I didn't make YouTube videos, I would probably still make that upgrade just because there are so many changes. So let me know what you guys think about this iPad mini down in the comments below. Do you think it's going to be as good as all the hype is making it seem? I think it will, but who knows? There's a lot of times I've been surprised when I actually get the device in hand and it's not as good as I thought. So make sure you guys subscribe by clicking that button down below because I will be doing gaming tests, performance tests, battery tests, things like that with this new iPad mini, and you don't want to miss that. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.